impossible task of rock climbing without any.
And there's also, I was saying, there's also a lot of tension there because you're almost positive that she's just going to fall.
I mean, it would happen to anyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe even Juno when she's coming across, because she's like pulling them out of the wall, right? Because they need to have all the supplies they can keep because they lost the rope bag and the whatever, the collapse earlier. And yeah, so that one I think too, where you're like, wow, is Juno gonna die here? Which, I mean, if she wasn't so integral to the plot later, like that actually would have been a pretty decent way to get rid of one character, would be just to have them fall to their death there.
Yes.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of tension in a lot of it, which is what makes then the reveal of, oh, by the way, there's also monsters down here, to be like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, really? Like, you know, these poor people, like, they're already stuck down here. Now you're going to put down these, like, I don't know. It's just, again, this is why you don't go down in caves. I mean, it's Exhibit A.
Well, the whole thing is really well paced. You mentioned the monster not being out till halfway through, but as soon as they get down in the cave, Sarah kind of sees this bloody handprint, which means some people's been down it before. But then she has the encounter with the bats, so kind of forgets about that. And then when they're doing the climb across this, and Rebecca finds the bit of climbing gear that's already in there. It's like 100 years old. So the kind of the mystery aspect of just the caves and the cave exploring is really well handled, really well distributed out to us. It's just it's a very well made film. It's a really well made film.
Yeah, no, there's also the potential, because you're not really sure if what Sarah is seeing is really there, right?
Yeah, because she has her nightmares, her visions of her daughter's birthday party.
Yeah, so it could be hallucinations, and it could just be things that she's saying. And so there's definitely some to that as well, that where you're like not really sure, but then, you know, then once all hell breaks loose, then you're like, oh, okay, actually, this is actually happening.
I love when she's like, I saw a man, maybe they can help. I was like, no.
Yeah.
not going to help. This is an extra problem.
Yeah.
And another, well, not really a stupid decision, but when they realised that they were stuck down there and they had to conserve their batteries and things, I was like, well, half of you turn your headlamps off, please. Like, you don't need them all on at this moment. They're all just stood around talking to each other. Half of you turn them off. Just for now, but for the time being, please. Just because there's so much tension in this one, because they are stuck underground. There's no way out. They're going to run out of everything. I think there's water down there, but they run out of food. They run out of light. They run out of just anything else they have. So just turn off.
Honestly, even talking about it is unnerving. Like, I just like going down there, like, because like that's the ultimate fear, is that you're stuck down there and then you're literally just going to starve or, you know,
be eaten,
die from dehydration and whatever. It's awful. It's just all bad. So, but again, I do love this movie though, and I think it's just because it's a way for me to experience these fears without actually having to experience the fears, and it works out really well for me in that way.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to experience finding a lake of blood and viscera underwater and submerging yourself in it, and then just being covered in that for the rest of the film.
No, it's funny because when she's laying on that rock or whatever, she has all that. She'd just come out of the blood lake or whatever. And then that one kind of steps above her, even puts his foot on her face and stuff.
Drools
and like
on her.
does little like drools, right?
Yeah.
And it's like the drool lands on her. And it's like, that's pretty gross, but you're pretty covered with a lot of grossness right now. That's probably not that bad anymore.
Yeah, the thing you'd use to wash that off is as bad as the thing that just landed on you. So.
Yeah.
Unpleasant.
Imagine how bad that place smells.
Ugh.
Like, I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah.
Again, another reason not to go down in caves.
Yeah, that can't smell good. Just the pyramid of animal bones that they have to climb at one point. Like, they're all picked clean. Great, no problem there at all. So everything's fine. Oh, I don't like going down there. What does it smell like? Because I enjoy The Walking Dead, but I can't imagine anything smells good in that world. Even when they're away from the zombies, you're away from any kind of civilization and deodorant for a decade at this point. So,
yeah, it's not really a topic that's they're not brought up in these movies and situations. I understand why, but it's definitely something that could be talked about, I think.
It's a fun thing they do over on Star Wars Minute, going through the Star Wars films minute by minute. It's like, what does this smell like? This alien world, and trying to establish what. That's always fun to try and think about that. Yeah. But not when you think.
I'm trying to think of
that.
There's only one moment that I can think of is when they're in the trash compactor, right? When Han
not
says,
good.
"What a wonderful smell you've discovered." But like, other than that, like, yeah, not a lot of conversation about that.
Like, is there like a new Death Star smell kind of thing? When you first...
Yes, like a new car.
Yeah,
I love it. I hope so. It's a wonderful smell.
Okay, so did you have any other thoughts on the Descent? Anything we didn't get to?
I don't think so. I think we touched on a lot of it, and again, just to kind of reiterate, the part that I find most impressive is in the filmmaking and the kind of just realistic, using of all props possible, like the video camera, right? We're going to show some stuff through the video camera and kind of use the found footage thing, not in a lot, but just in a few moments, right? Or like you were talking about, the homemade caves, basically, and using the lights I just think it's very industrious, and you just see kind of that creativity kind of shining through and just making a good old-fashioned, just scary movie, right? And putting people in positions that you have no desire to be in, no interest in ever being like these characters. But again, you add enough drama and depth in the script to give the characters and a little bit more meat to them, have them be a little more well-rounded. And I think when you kind of add all that together and then throw in some blind monsters who just rip people's throats out, like, you've got the recipe, and there's a reason it was successful. And I mean, this movie is not for everybody, understandably. And
no, I did not watch it with my wife. I watched this on my own.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was not going to happen.
Well, I have to admit, so even though she says she's seen it before, my wife said that, or she remembered most of it, or she watched it, she was in the same room as me. I'd say she probably watched half of it. There was a lot of looking down and a lot of crafts going on at the same time. So like it was she was there, but she wasn't really watching it because it gets a little bit rough. But I will say that for those who are so inclined, and I think it's, for me, I probably put it in my top 5 horror, just because it stuck with me, and even today watching it, it surprised me and shocked me in ways because I've kind of forgotten things, right? Whereas like I think other movies, even if you see them only once or twice, like you'd be like, oh, I know what happens here. I know what happens here. Like I had forgotten a decent amount, and it had a good shock value still. So I think it holds up, 16 years later now, somehow crazily. And yeah, I think it's just one of my favorites when it comes to horror movies.
I'm glad to hear it. Obviously, this is only my first time watch, so I'm not ready to put it up there yet, but I can definitely see it being a contender. Films I consider favourites are ones I've seen several times. I can't just after one viewing. But this is definitely a really solid. It's one of the better films we've covered on the one-offs. They haven't been. I think Shark Night is the one I just haven't enjoyed at all. But all the rest of them have been really good. And this Shark Night's a bad film. Everything else has been like fun or just well made or just really enjoyable. So I'm having a good time going through these at the moment. And yeah, this is great. I thank you for picking it. And
I'm glad it was deemed adjacent enough that we could dive into it.
And we needed like a Halloween. This is our Halloween episode, and this is the most Perfect. Horror of all of the ones we talked about. I think because shark movies, there aren't really a lot of horror in shark films. I think there's too much daylight and there's too much like, hey, everything's just having fun on the beach. Oh, there's a shark. Okay, we're still gonna hang out on the beach. Whereas this is just
right.
Underground. You're gonna die. Horror.
Yeah.
So I got a quick list of how it's Deep Blue Sea adjacent.
All right, I'm excited to see how you're able to pull this off.
This is one of the more difficult lists I've had to do. They use a flare at one point, or several points. There's flares in Deep Blue Sea. The main female character has to deal with a family tragedy in the same way that in Deep Blue Sea, Dr. Susan McAllister has to relive her father having Alzheimer's. They had to rewrite the ending after release, or towards the end of release, and so they were deep to see to remake the ending. There is opening fun on a boat. And there's a
Okay.
Again, some of these aren't the clearest of things. Sarah keeps on having visions of her daughter's birthday. We celebrate Dr. Susan McAllister's birthday in Deep Blue Sea.
Okay.
The action takes place below surface level. The point where they get to a cave painting and they see there's 2 exits, very much like the scene in Deep Blue Sea where they look at the map of Aquatica to try and work out a way out. Exact same thing.
Okay.
Cave painting, map of the
That's
facility.
a good one.
Same. Happy with that one.
I like that one. That's a good one.
Yep. There's a kind of villainous character in the film who has a secret from the rest of them. In this one, it's Juno they're in their own cave, and the other one, it's Susan having genetically modified shark brains. Same thing. They use a lighter. A lighter is key to the plot. In The Descent, they use the lighter to try and determine which route is out, if there's a draft, and Preacher kills a shark with a lighter.
Yeah, Preacher Chef.
Preacher. Yep. When Juno is reaching down for Holly at one point, when she breaks her leg, it reminded me of when Carter is reaching down for Janice. It's a similarly shot sequence, just that reaching down when they're in the ladder shaft. That's not a good one. When they're all attending to Holly after her injury. Everyone's attending to Jim when he gets his arm bitten off. And even in that scene, Sarah takes the pick bit off of the pickaxe to use the handle as a splint. So she's using a key bit of equipment to help the person who's in need. And Russell Franklin, Sam Jackson, comes in with a belt to tie off Jim's arm. It's a key bit of equipment. It was holding up his trousers, and now it's saving Jim's life temporarily. I mentioned the colour flares and the corridors being like DBC 2, so that's done. And that's about it. There's a bit where one of the crawlers, I think comes down behind Sam and Becca when they're all separated, which looked a lot like when they're underwater and Jim's head just kind of appears. They both come down from above and scare. It's like a jump scare. But yeah, this isn't a very DBC adjacent film. It's not at all. But hey, we've talked about it now, so it happened.
Two things. One is that was very impressive. I would clap for you, but similarly to you, my dog is also asleep right next to me, and my wife is asleep in the room next to me. So, in that case, I will not be clapping, but I would, and I am clapping in my head. Secondly, it just gave an opportunity for us to these currently solo parts of our partner pods that we kind of brought us back together, which is kind of great, and looking forward to having you on our show shortly.
Yes, I'll be there soon to talk about the Italian Job.
Yes,
so I'm looking forward to that.
Marky Mark, right?
I'm going to watch that in as a reminder, but no, Mikey Caine.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that being the first time I see that one, because I am a big fan of the remake, so I'm excited to watch the original.
I enjoy the remake. So I'm looking forward to talking about the original more so. But one last thing we need to cover here is how deep and how blue is The Descent? Because I've been comparing all of these films to Deep Blue Sea in terms of their depth and their blueness. Deep Blue Sea is on average 47.5 feet deep and about 31% blue. Working out the depth of The Descent was difficult because it's on land. And when I did Deep Blue Sea, I compared it all to sea level. And so if I were to do that with The Descent, they're in North Carolina, that already has an average elevation of 700 feet above sea level. So I just ignored that. If it's at ground level, it's at ground level. That's when they climb a mountain, that's them going above ground level. But as soon as they start going down, that's then all below ground level. So the level that I went down from changed throughout the film. Anyway, they say at one point they're 2 miles underground. I think that was an exaggeration, because that's a long way, and I didn't see a lot of them going down. But I took that as gospel, and assumed that was true. So up to that point, I took them as a steady descent from when they were underground to that 2 mile down point, and then they just stayed 2 mile down point for the rest of the film. So this is works out on average as minus 6,000